Hello and welcome to today's lesson where we're looking at how to perform a gap analysis. We'll go through the theory and then we'll look at a simple example too. So gap analysis is a simple tool which is used by organizations to raise their performance level. Imagine that you're hiking along a path when you come across a three-way junction. Now, which direction should you take? Well, that depends on where you want to get to. Now, armed with the knowledge of where you want to get to, it becomes much easier to work out the necessary steps you'll need to take to reach your final destination, including which of the three junctions you should take right now. Now, that simplistic analogy is the same basis upon which gap analysis works. A gap analysis can help an organization to understand where they want to be, the gap between where they are now and where they want to be, and hence what steps they should take to close that gap. Now, the concept of a gap analysis is illustrated in the diagram you can see here, and you can see from it that to get from our current state to our desired state, there will need to be a number of key steps we need to take to bridge the gap. Now, from this, we'll create an action plan outlining the exact actions we'll take to achieve each step so that over time the gap becomes completely closed and we've reached our desired state. Now, gap analysis is a general tool, and what I mean by that is that it can be used at different granularities. So for example, you could use it at an organization level, you could use it as part of project management, or you could use it for strategy development. There are all kinds of different levels or granularities you can use it at. Gap analysis will often focus on one or more of the following perspectives. Organizational perspectives, so for example, what skill sets or roles are missing or lacking from the organization right now. The business direction perspective, so for example, is there a gap in our product or a gap in the market that we're not currently serving? Gap analysis can be used from a business process perspective. So, for example, how can the things we do be made more efficient? And gap analysis can also be looked at from a technology perspective. So, for example, are there systems that we're missing, or are there incompatibilities between existing systems? Now, there are many similar methods to perform a gap analysis, but the process we'll present in this video consists of 5 steps, which you can see in the diagram, which are: step 1, describe the general area; 2, identify specific improvement areas; 3, determine targets; 4, determine current state; and 5, determine the action steps. So step 1, describe the general area. In this step, we describe the general area that we want to analyse and improve. Now, this may seem like an unnecessary step, but by performing it, we not only highlight what area is under investigation, but also it informs people what areas are not under investigation. And that helps avoid scope creep, and it keeps the rest of the analysis very focused. So, for example, we might decide to analyse our online marketing efforts, and that obviously implies that we're not investigating our offline advertising, such as print and television. So by being very clear about what we are and what we are not investigating, it keeps everyone on the same page. Step 2, identify specific improvement areas. Now, in this step, we identify specific areas for improvement within the general area we described in step 1. So for example, if the general area we're investigating is our online marketing, then we may identify content creation and paid advertising as specific areas we'd like to improve. So step 3, determine our targets. And as we've now identified our specific improvement areas, the next step is to set targets for each of those specific areas. Now, a common input to this step is to use benchmarking, so looking at how other companies are doing to find your areas of weakness, or maybe analysing industry best practice is another input you could use. Now, what targets you set will depend on a combination of things, such as the time available to address the gap, as well as the ambition of the organization and how far you are, industry best practices and the benchmarking you may have done. Step 4, determine current status. Now that we understand where we want to get to, it's also important to understand where we are before putting the plan together. So by understanding where we are, it makes it more likely we'll create a realistic plan of action. It also makes it easier to see if we're making progress towards our desired state, because if we don't know where we started, then it's very difficult to know if we've made progress, and if we have made progress, how much progress have we made? It's very difficult to know that if we don't know where we're starting from. Now, the difference between step 4 and step 3 is our gap, and that's basically the gap between where we are and where we want to be. So the final step is step 5, to determine the action steps. And now that we understand the gap, we use this final step to describe the improvement steps we'll take to close the gap and get where we want to be. Now, in essence, this step is our action plan to get where we want to be, and it should be prioritized so as to deliver the biggest return on investment. Now, this could be done by prioritizing the most critical gaps first, or you could target, low-hanging, easy-to-reach fruit first. It's up to you, but it should be prioritized to deliver the biggest return to the organization. So let's look at a simple example to bring this to life. Now, for the purpose of this example, suppose we work for an electronics company and we're investigating the customer satisfaction of customers who return faulty equipment to us within warranty for repair. Now, the first step is to describe the general area we are investigating. So you can see that in the diagram here. We are investigating the customer satisfaction of faulty goods returned within warranty. We're not considering customer satisfaction outside of warranty, nor the satisfaction of customers at the point of sale. So as you can see, we're concerned only with faulty goods returned during warranty. If we weren't explicit in stating the area under investigation, then it's possible, that there could be some confusion within the organization that we work for around the scope of this gap analysis. So the second step is to identify specific improvement areas. And for the purposes of our example, we identify 2 specific areas we want to improve. So firstly, customer satisfaction rate, that is the percentage of customers that are satisfied with the service they receive, and repair time, and that's the total time it takes to repair the faulty product and return it to the customer. So we update our gap analysis to reflect this. The third step is to determine targets for each of these metrics, and the company decides to benchmark its best competitors to do this. Now, from doing this, it determines that to compete with the best in the industry, it should be aiming for a customer satisfaction rate of 99% and a repair time of 12 days. And it decides basically to choose these values as its targets for these areas. And you can see that reflected in this diagram here. So step 4, determine the current state. So now that we know the targets we want to achieve, in this step we assess where we are currently against those targets. Now, unfortunately for this company in our example, it doesn't currently benchmark customer satisfaction, but it does know that the average repair time is 16 days. So we update our gap analysis template to reflect this. And that's it. We have reached step 5, where we determine the action steps. And that's where the company describes the actions it will take to close the gap between the current state and the desired state. Now, because this company has no data for customer satisfaction rate, it decides the first step is going to be to benchmark the current situation and then review the findings of this analysis. Now, to improve the repair time metric and get it to 12 days, the company decides to implement a new repair system and train staff how to use this new system. Now, through the completion of its gap analysis, the company has clearly articulated the exact metrics it wishes to improve and by how much it wishes to improve them. It has understood exactly where it stands now for each of those metrics, and it has created a solid action plan to address the gap between the current state of each metric and the desired state. So that is it. All that remains for the company now is to action each of those action steps to eventually close the gap and reach the desired state. Now, if you wish to create your own gap analysis, there's a template you can download by following the link below this video. So in summary, a gap analysis is a very simple tool which is used by organizations to raise their performance level. It can help an organization identify where they want to be, where they are now, and how to get there. So that is it. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.